Hi, I'm Matt from Educraft.org, the counselor for the Minecraft mod making camps and the curriculum writer. So, today we're going to do some recipes. You ready for some nice home cooking? So in Minecraft there's four different kinds of recipes. A shape recipe, a shapeless recipe, a block forging recipe, and a item forging recipe. Um, they're all pretty similar except for the shape recipe. It's a little bit different. And so we're going to go over all four of them. So in Eclipse, you're going to go over to your My Mod. You're going to look for your init package for initialization, and you're going to go to mod crafting. All these recipes get initialized in your main class under your initialization event right there, modcrafting.register. So that's when they sort of load into the game. So go back to mod crafting, and you're going to see there's already some recipes in here, and there's a ton of comments trying to help you sort of remember a ton of comments explaining what everything does. Okay, so first off, we're going to take a look at the shapeless recipes. Okay, so what happens is for a shaped or shapeless recipe, you type game registry, capital G, capital R, dot add shapeless recipe. Notice the capitalizations. Alright, it gives you this, it already knows what method you're using. It's coming from the game registry class, and you're adding this new method that's in the game registry class. You list the output first, and then the parameters are the input. And so what you do is in the output you want a new item stack. An item stack is just like in your inventory you have a grid. An item stack is just the thing that takes up space on the grid. So basically what the item is and how much of it there is. New item stack, and let's make a recipe for items dot apple. You can actually make an apple now in Minecraft. And the parameters, what do you think should be the ingredients to an apple? Let's go with let's go with a sword. You use an iron sword to make an apple. Okay, if you want to do more than one thing in your shapeless recipe, what you have to do is, I almost forgot. You have to have it after the item that the recipe makes, you put a comma and you say how much of it you want it to make. Let's say 1. Okay. That shouldn't be there. There we go. Okay. So in parentheses, so add shapeless recipe, everything after that should have a parentheses around it. Then this item stack, there should be a parentheses around the item and how much of it. Okay, cool, we're good. So you add a comma to the end, and you there's an example of this above where you use 2 rotten fleshes to make a food item. So you'll say new object, and you put these square brackets, and this tells you you're going to make a list. So you have the square brackets, and then you have the curly brackets, and you have what are the contents of that list. And then you just list the things that go into the recipe. If you find that weird, then you can just copy what I did, paste it, and change the item that comes out and change the items that go in to your heart's content. Alright, we're going to go into some smelting recipes. So you smelt blocks, and you smelt items, and it's pretty much the same thing. The only difference is when you're calling when you call an item, you have to call the item from the class that it's stored in. And in Minecraft, all the items are stored in a class called items, and all the blocks are stored in a class called blocks. If it's an item or a block from your specific mod, it's going to be stored in a class called mod blocks and mod items. So here's an example. Rotten flesh, I typed items dot, and then I got a cool drop down menu to select all the items in the game. And otherwise, if you type, it's the same thing when you call blocks. You type blocks dot, then you get a list of all the blocks you can grab in the game. And notice it starts with, classes start with a capital letter. Okay, and so down here I have a recipe where if you, unlike the other ones where it's the starts with the output and then does the input, in this case it starts with the input and then does the output, and you get experience for smelting. So this is how much experience you get from doing the smelting. So for what you would do is you would type game registry just like before, only instead of add shapeless recipe you say add smelting, and then oops, it sort of auto typed stuff out for me. Add smelting, then you have what you want to put in. So I don't know if it's an item or a block. If it's an item you type items dot, if it's a block you type blocks dot, and then you pick what you want. So if you smelt a block of air, then you get, and just like in the one, you have to go with item stacks, that way you can do the number of items. You get new item stack, and what should we get with air? Let's go with items dot, if you smelt air, you get cake. Alright, that's absurd. And then the amount of experience you get from it. Now this is stored as a float, which means it's a number with a decimal. So let's say 2.3, and even if you want it to be 2, you have to say 2.0. So 2.3, and floats always end with a capital F. Let's close our parentheses that we started over here, and then every line ends in a semicolon. Okay, so blocks and items are pretty much done the same way. The only difference is you say item dot or mod item dot when you're smelting items, and when you're smelting blocks you say blocks dot or mod blocks dot. Alright, on to shaped recipes. Shaped recipes, a lot like shapeless recipes, they start pretty much the same. That you have what you want to get out of the recipe, and you don't have to put a number. You can. And but then instead of just listing stuff, you have to sort of create your own little 3x3 grid that looks like a crafting table. So in the comma after the output, after what you want to get, you know, that's what we see down here, you then just kind of use your keyboard to create a 3x3 section. So you have the top, so you basically use quote marks and leave 3 spaces, comma, quote marks, and this can all be done in one row. Like an example of that is the armor. Yeah, the armor, it's all done in one row. So you have item materials chest plate, then you have 3 spaces and a quotation mark for the top row of your crafting table, comma, 3 spaces in between quotation marks for the middle row with comma, and the commas go after the quote marks. This isn't English class. Then 3 spaces for the bottom. Okay, and then what you do is you use letters. I usually use capital letters, or they're called characters, to fill in the locations of what you are using. So if you put an M in here and M in here, and that means in the upper right corner there's going to be an object. Let me show you an example of armor recipes. Okay, so you can kind of see that this is the chest plate. It's an item in the upper left, an item in the upper right, there, all items across the middle, and items all the way across the bottom row, there. Okay, so the game doesn't know what material that you want. And so in my case, I made these things called material ingots just for the game. But you could usually it's some kind of ingot if it's an item, but it can be whatever you want. Just like down here, you type item dot or mod item dot, depending on whether the item is in your mod or in the regular game. But first, what you do is you have a comma after your 3x3 grid in quotation marks, and then look at this in apostrophes, not quote marks, but apostrophes, because this is not a string, it's a character. And so for characters, you just use apostrophes. And then you write the character that you had used to put the location of where you put things in the shaped recipe. And then you have a comma, and then you say what that thing is. And I know you might be thinking, Matt, what if you want more than one item in your recipe? Okay, well then you'll use different characters. So look up here in the recipe for the jar. You have one coal in the middle on the top, but then you have glass on the middle row on the sides, and then coal across the bottom. And so what you do is you just keep going out. So you have comma C, comma blocks dot coal block, comma, and then G, and notice, yeah, they're in single quotes, which is the apostrophe key. Then you have, for glass, because it uses a thing called metadata, I had to do it as an item stack, but you could here just say items dot blocks dot mod items dot mod blocks dot, and you'd be fine. But the point is, you just keep you go through and you list all of the characters you put in here that represent ingredients. And if you don't specify what G means, then the game will take anything. So if you want to have a recipe where any pattern of stuff makes something, then just put in all X's and don't clarify what they are, and it'll be silly. But you know, the fun of Minecraft modding is the stupid. So if you want to do that, go nuts. All right, and that's basically the nitty-gritty on recipes. So you should have this file, and there's there's comments in here that are sort of describing what's going on, so that you can get a little mini lesson in the file as you're coding. Okay, so that is how you do all the different types of recipes.